gangsters, 'cause we speak bold, ain't tripping on the haters. It could take freedom from a cold dead hands, we're locked and loaded for the last dance. 'Cause we're the new American gangsters, ready to die for this man.
Hola, Shelby. ¿Cómo estás?
Hello. ¿Cómo
How
está
you doing?
usted? I don't know. I flunked Spanish.
You flunked
so
Spanish.
I
Well, that
did.
sucks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. How you doing?
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Have a good weekend?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It went by too fast.
Yeah.
They usually do.
Yeah. They always do. They never last long enough. The weekend should be actually Monday through Friday.
Right. And
And
the
then
workday Saturday,
we
Sunday.
work Saturday and Sunday.
I like that.
It'd be much better.
Yes,
Yeah.
it would.
I think I might adopt that schedule, which means I won't be here next Monday. But
I actually won't be here
'cause
next
this is work.
Monday.
Oh, won't you
I'm on
be?
vacation.
Are you?
Yeah.
Who?
Yeah.
I did not approve vacation for you.
Vacation time.
Right. Right. Where you going? Oh, yeah. I don't want you to say.
Yeah,
You get a lot
probably
of
not.
freaky people out there.
We're getting out into the country,
Good.
spending time with family,
Good.
which
Good.
is always important.
You know, it was really freaky the other night, right? You get people like Adrian Fontes and Stephen Richer, just hooting and hollering about how we're all violent MAGA extremists, and you see all this terrorism now ramping up against MAGA, against ICE, against otherwise good people. I took my dog in town for a couple of weeks for work, in my beautiful wife's house, and I took my dogs for a walk, and we got back at about 11:15, and I always cool down, right?
Mhm.
You got to cool down before you can go to sleep, get your heart rate down. And so I sit down at the computer, and I got the little blinds open on a window to the right of my computer. And I'm sitting there, and I hear some noise that sound like rocks. And this was about 11:30 at night. And I look out the window, and there's some dude standing there
In your yard?
staring at me. Just staring at me, and he has his phone out, and the camera end is pointed at me because the light is glaring back to him, and really freaked me out.
Yeah, well, in light of now the
Yeah.
times we're living in, it should
Yeah.
freak anybody out.
And then I went to the sliding glass door where the driveway is, and I looked out, and he had moved, and he's standing in the end of the driveway, just staring at me with his phone out. I dialed 911. Police came, they were very responsive, very professional, did a very good job. The dude disappeared, never found, but this is weird, totally creepy.
Totally. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you're
And
safe.
And yeah, but nothing will creep you out like that. Some weirdo staring in your window. Yeah. But anyway, I should close my shades. Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
I just want to say that we're absolute diehard advocates of freedom of speech, freedom to record in public. But when you're recording into someone's private property through their windows and them in their privacy of their home, they do have an expectancy of privacy that is illegal.
And it's
That
super
is
creepy.
not. It's
That's
creepy,
just-
and that is not covered by the First Amendment. You do not
I mean,
have a
legal
right
or
to do
not,
that.
It's creepy as fuck. I'm sorry to use that kind of language if I offend anybody out there, but I mean, it's exceptionally unsettling.
And you're right, Steve.
know.
When you're out on the
Right.
street and you're walking
Yeah.
and people want to pursue you, videotape you, there's a layer of, you can do that, but you don't
Right.
have the right to go into somebody's private property
Right.
and stalk them through their window.
Yeah. it's
Super
creepy.
wrong.
creepy.
I don't know if you heard about this, but it reminded me. It came out today that a man, I believe his name is Jay Jones. He's running for attorney general in Virginia.
Oh,
Did
I
you hear
heard it.
about that?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
crazy.
He was texting a Democrat lawmaker
Right.
talking about how he wants the
His
Speaker of the House and her kids to be murdered
his
so that,
fantasies.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, super
Yeah,
creepy.
and that he fantasized about seeing dead babies and stuff. It just
He said if I had two
Yeah.
bullets and I was in front of the speaker, and I think her name was Wright or something, I can't remember her name, and I was in front of her or Hitler, 2 bullets for the speaker every day, and I hope that her children get slaughtered, and just
Yeah.
really, really disgusting,
Well,
disturbing stuff.
it's interesting that the Democrat picks Adolf Hitler over a Republican, and it's just indicative of the fact that they're pushing this fascist violence in the United States.
Yeah.
That there's been a lot of gaslighting going on, right? They try to flip language on its head and make us appear to be fascists when we want to get rid of government to the greatest extent possible, and they want government power. They want to use that government power. We've played it on this show, right? People wanting to put
MAGA in
in
camps.
camps.
Yeah,
and
re-education camps.
Right. And so it's kind of crazy where we're at as a society. And we had a whole show on that before. But you know what? We're going to talk about something different today, right? Because elections, fundamentally, elections
Absolutely.
matter.
Look at it. To me, it kind of
Yeah.
segues nicely,
Yeah.
Brian, because, one of the things that I wanted to tell people today is don't grow weary in what we already know. And remember, we have to keep it at the forefront. We
Yeah.
cannot forget history.
Right.
We can't forget what we know about elections and what we have seen our elections, our elections departments, our counties, the county attorneys, the things that they've done, because it's a forewarning of things that we can potentially
Right.
see in the future.
Mhm.
And after the Kari Lake trials,
Mhm.
I think there's been a concerted effort to do as much potential damage as possible to Kari Lake and her reputation,
Yep.
to the reputation
Yeah.
of anybody who is involved, yourself, myself, Steve, the organization,
Right.
here, We the People, Attorney Kurt Olson.
Mhm.
And it went even further than just the sanctions and the pushes for disbarment,
Right.
which is huge, don't get
Uh-huh.
me wrong, but the personal character assassinations that
Right.
took place.
Yeah.
And there's a
That still
reason,
take
right?
place. Yeah.
They want to bury it. Don't they want to bury it?
They want to bury it, and that's part of the problem. And sort of one of the reasons I wanted to talk about election challenges tonight is I'm going to talk to conservative attorneys out there, right? If you're a conservative attorney, it doesn't matter where you're at, what city, what county, what state, what planet you happen to be on, right? We need you involved. And as we talk about election challenges, at least how they happen in Arizona and most other states, we need you involved early on in the process, right? The more conservative attorneys that are on the ground during an election, and now elections take place over the span of how long?
29 days.
29 days in Arizona.
I think some states are 45 days.
Right.
And then we've
Right.
got some that are narrow, like
Right.
11 to 14 days.
Yeah.
But I mean, we're dealing with an election season, aren't we? This
Yeah.
isn't election day anymore.
Yeah,
this
this
is the
is-
season of elections.
This is the election World Series on steroids, right?
Right.
It's spread over a long period of time.
Or like the Olympics.
Right.
Like
The Olympic, yeah, it lasts forever, months and months. But, as these elections take place, we need conservative legal support throughout, because there's a lot of areas to cover. What in total, Maricopa County in 2022 had 250 some vote centers.
Yes.
Is that right? And so
Yes.
what they do is they open them progressively, right? They open a few, and then after a couple weeks they open more, and then they open more, and then they max it out
Right. Then
prior
there's the
to
big
the election.
finale at the end.
Right.
Yeah.
And like the fireworks show. But we need people that are positioned throughout the county, whether it be at Maricopa County Central Tabulation Facility, whether it be at a vote center, whatever the case may be. We need conservative legal support to identify problems, right? And a lot of people don't know this, but to identify problems with how they're conducting the election relative to the process they stated in advance the election would be. But that's a whole nother point, right?
Right.
The judge was very consistent throughout the Hobbs trial, for example, that process, we couldn't attack process, right? And when you attack process, when do you do that?
Um, so when you attack the process itself, you have to do it well in advance.
Right.
And it's not days in advance. It's as soon as the information becomes reasonably available to you,
Right.
or else you fall into what's called latches, right?
That's 100% correct.
Do you want to kind of explain to people what the difference is? Because it was really interesting to learn for me.
Right. So if Maricopa County says we are going to do a part of the process in steps A, B, C, and D, right? And they say that before the election. If step D is illegal, it is contrary to Arizona law, and you don't file suit, then they can do step D during the election.
Right. Even if it's illegal.
Right.
Because
And-
it wasn't challenged
Right.
in
And
a timely
so
manner.
the whole concept of latches is you knew the information was publicly available. You chose to do nothing. You can't complain now.
Right. It's kind of it's sort of akin to a crime is going to be committed, but you wait for the crime to be committed to question it, right? And
Right.
so it's kind of that idea.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but if you,
They're the ones committing the crimes.
Steve said,
Yeah.
like the FBI does. I don't know if
Right.
you heard that, but
Yeah.
so
No.
to avoid latches during the election,
Mhm.
you would file challenges and lawsuits if they say they're going to do steps A, B, C, and D,
Mhm.
and those are legal, but
Right.
they're not actually doing steps A, B, C, and D the way they told you they would. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And
so-
that's open.
That's open. That's open. And so, elections, you have these two election seasons. One is pre-election, right? And you see Representative Colleton has always been very active in pre-election season. And that's when, the Secretary of State drafts the EPM and submits it for comment. And then, the governor and the AG approve it, at which point, when it's approved by all three, it becomes law.
And these are the cases when you talk pre-election, Brian, are you referring to the cases that are brought to the court to challenge the processes they intend to use?
That's correct.
So the
Right.
laws that they tell you in advance
Uh-huh.
they're going to break. That's the pre-election legal season, right?
That's correct. And so, for example, Adrian Fontes wrote into the EPM that they have the right to put duct tape on American citizens' mouth and prevent them from criticizing election officials. Right. That's 100% straight up violation of the First Amendment to the United States Constitution, which guarantees us free speech. And so Representative Colleton, I believe it was, filed suit in that case, or somebody else did with his input and direction. I can't recall who
I
it
think
was.
he drafted it, but
Right.
another attorney kind of
Yeah.
picked it up and
Yeah.
ended up litigating it.
And so Adrian Fontes law. He wanted to how do you straight up prevent a people from criticizing their government? Right? That's the most insane thing I have ever heard in my life, right?
Right.
They don't let you do that in Ukraine. They'll throw you in jail if you do that in Ukraine.
That is the number one primary purpose for the First Amendment.
Yeah, criticize your government. And
Yes.
so, when we can no longer criticize our government, whatever, branch or department of government that may be, then we are no longer a free people when we can't
Absolutely.
exercise that free speech. And so when you get to part two of election season, the actual election, right? And so if they're doing something illegal, for example, um, we had the whole printer debacle, right, in
Right.
2022. You ever seen anything like that before?
No, not like that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm 60 years old. I have never seen a failure during an election on that massive of a scale.
Well, and here's what's interesting. We talk about the election season, right,
Right.
Brian? I mean, we're dealing with elections in Maricopa County
Hmm.
that last for 29 days of early voting.
Right.
It didn't happen for
Uh-huh.
29 days because
Right.
if it would have happened for 29 days,
Right.
a suit could have been filed mid-election
Right.
and it would have avoided potential challenges, right?
Right.
But it only happened on that final day, that election day, where
The,
there really wasn't
yeah,
a lot that could happen. But the attorneys did try. There were attorneys that tried
that's
to
correct.
appeal to the courts
Right.
on election day and say, "Hey, look, Your Honor,
Right.
there's a problem," and that was rejected by the court. Right?
That's correct. And so, what basically happened was, and I think it involved the Arizona and possibly Maricopa County Republican parties and their attorneys, I believe, filed suit. I think it was in federal court. Was it federal or state court? I can't recall.
Pretty sure it was state court.
But they filed suit requesting that the polls be held open longer because the machine failures were causing these huge lines, and people were people were leaving. They didn't have time. People have lives. They have kids and stuff like that. Their lawsuit was rejected by the court, right? And that's another reason why we need more conservative attorneys actively participating during the actual election cycle, because you have to bring a claim immediately, right?
Right.
The more eyes you have on that claim, the more people you having drafting your complaint, the more lawyers who are officers of the court and can offer credible testimony about what they're seeing taking place during the election through affidavit or whatever. The more credible your lawsuit is, and hence you would think the greater chance of it actually being successful. And so the importance of lawyers in the election process cannot be understated at all,
Right.
right?
Agreed.
And then you have post-elect, right? You have the actual challenge of the election of a specific candidate,
Right.
right? And you've participated quite a bit in that process, haven't you?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
We participated obviously we participated in it with the Kari Lake
Yeah.
challenges. We participated with the Abe Hamaday's
Right.
challenges. And election challenge cases,
Mhm.
they're not like a normal civil case, right?
God,
They
no.
don't follow the same
No.
rules, do they?
Not at all. I mean, in a normal civil case, one of the law firms I used to work for, we did a lot of very complex product liability lawsuits, and so you would have a case for 2 years, and then you would go to trial for 30 days or more,
Hmm.
right? And so these are very complex cases, and I would say that the changes that have been brought into our elections in the last 20 years have made our elections exceptionally complex and very, very technical, right? And
Right.
so, I mean, elections before, what would you be able to do? What would you have to do in an election?
Right. I mean, not a whole bunch, right? I
Right.
mean, especially if you go back pre-mail-in ballot,
Mm-hmm.
there wasn't a lot to be challenged.
Right.
I mean, there were
Mhm.
still fraudulent votes, and you would
Right.
challenge, you know, John Doe voted at more than one polling center,
Right.
or John Doe voted in this precinct, and we know John Doe moved last year, right? Those
Right.
kind of challenges, which are
Right.
pretty cut and dry,
Pretty cut and dry.
and they don't involve a lot of necessity for discovery
Right.
and experts
Right.
and investigation
Yeah.
or analytics,
Uh-huh.
right? I mean, it's pretty
Yeah.
much black and white.
Right, and that's one reason why. I mean, when the election challenge statutes were written, you had, people went to vote in their precinct. Mail-in voting was not all that significant as it is now. Arizona's had no excuse mail-in voting for a very long time, but it's really burgeoned over the last, 10, 20 years, right? And so,
Absolutely.
you would get the precinct lists, so you'd know that 153 votes were cast in precinct 1, 200 votes cast in precinct 2, and so your election challenge was based on the examples of potential fraud that you discussed, but they were also based on, were the ballots counted properly?
And number of ballots, right? Like if you had a precinct book that said
Uh-huh.
182 people signed into this precinct today, but you've got 250 ballots.
Mhm.
Again, that's something that's very obvious and doesn't require a
Right.
lot of effort to determine.
And because you don't know who voted what ballot, if the election contest being contested fell within that number of ballots, then you have a pretty easy case that fraud was responsible for the outcome of that election, right?
Right.
But today, you know what elections are like, don't you?
Yeah, they exist predominantly in a black box controlled
Right.
by a bureaucracy,
Right.
right? Which makes it a whole nother world,
Uh-huh.
because even if candidates understand and know something went wrong in the election,
Mhm.
such as what happened in 2022 in the November 8th election,
Right.
the Kari Lake challenge, you have these poll centers where everybody
Uh-huh.
knows something's wrong.
Right.
The world knows something's wrong,
Right.
and it's being covered on national news,
Uh-huh.
but nobody at face value
Uh-huh.
has the evidence or the understanding of what went wrong,
Right.
why it went wrong, and how it impacted a
Right.
person's ability to vote. That takes us down a whole nother rabbit hole, right?
Right. And so, for example, during the Kari Lake matter, we presented evidence from a statistician who, they interviewed people, or a pollster and interviewed people, talked about, whether or not what happened on election day in 2022 impacted their decision to vote or not. And we were able to show, we think, that a sufficient number of people were disenfranchised to change the outcome of the 2022 gubernatorial election, right? And so, these days, well, let's talk about the timing, right?
Yeah,
And so
absolutely.
the 2022 election was that November 8th?
Yes, November 8th of
Right.
2022.
Uh-huh.
And as you know, especially in Maricopa
Yeah.
County, it's a week or two before you even know
Right.
what the results are,
Right.
right?
Uh-huh.
And then there's canvassing deadlines
Right.
that have to be met. So we may find out the results on Thursday, and then they're
Uh-huh.
signing and officiating the results on Friday.
Right.
So it moves very, very quickly.
Exceptionally quickly. And really quickly, just to throw out there, we started this by sort of talking about the difference between a traditional civil case and an election case. Election cases happen very, very quickly because we're talking about governance, right? We're
Right.
talking about government. And so we kind of need a governor. I don't think we need the current governor. I'd rather have no governor in your state of Arizona than the current governor. That
Right.
It goes for the AG and Secretary of State.
We'll
as
take an
well.
empty seat for a
Right,
while.
take an empty seat for a while. But that's just not the way it works.
Right.
And so, election challenges have to happen with near lightning speed so that you can give finality,
Right.
to an election.
And you
Right.
have to look at the results before
Mhm.
you can determine whether there is any reason to challenge.
Right.
But you oftentimes don't have the finality of those records
Right.
until a day or two before before canvassing.
Right.
And Arizona law states that you have 10 days, not 10 business days,
Uh-huh.
10 days
Right.
from the canvass to file a challenge.
Right.
So again, if we get results on Thursday,
Mm-hmm.
they canvass it on Friday, then you have exactly 10 days to
Right.
look at what minimal records are made available to you publicly
Right.
to try and make a justifiable case that you can put in court, right? And you can't amend that later, really, for the most part, right, Brian? So
Yeah. it's-
in those 10 days, you have to know all the issues up front
Uh-huh.
without investigation when you
Uh-huh.
file. You can't add new issues as
Right.
you go. And I think that's the fallacy and a lot of criticism
Mhm.
that we heard and got during the Kari Lake trial
Mhm.
is, well, you guys discovered this. Why wasn't it part of the
Right.
lawsuit?
Right.
Well, you have a very
Uh-huh.
narrow window.
Right.
And you don't have all the documents you need. You don't have all the experts you need. And you're trying to develop a
Uh-huh.
case. And you don't have the ability,
Right.
if you discover 5 days later something horrid, to
Mhm.
just decide to throw that in. Like,
Right.
like there's limitations, right? Do you want
Right.
to talk a little bit about how that impacted some of what occurred?
Yeah, you get all these armchair quarterbacks out there, right?
Yes.
I don't want to give any of them any notoriety by name, so I'm not going to say their names. But they always very critical about what you didn't do, what wasn't done, what question wasn't asked, whatever the case may be. And there's a lot of that going on right now because these people keep coming back into the woodwork. And I think what they're doing is they're trying to use it to raise money and gain
Right.
notoriety for themselves. But I'll say that
Can I, and I want to inject something there
go ahead.
before you move on to your next point. So we still have people. So this was 2022. The Kari Lake trial was filed, and all the work we did spanned from 2022 to 2023. And we have people still to
actually
this day.
2024.
Yeah. Okay. Through 2024.
Oh.
And we have people still, though, to this day, which is like 3-4 years later,
Right.
saying, well, I discovered this. Why didn't you sue about this? Well, it
Right.
took you 5 years to find it. You thought we could find it in 10 days? I mean, we're really good, but we're not that good, right?
Well, and here's
you don't have the record.
right. Here's really the problem is that I think Maricopa County in general was very highly politicized in opposition to Kari Lake. It's government agencies, including to a large extent the county attorney's office, right?
Oh, yes.
And so, in an election challenge, the only discovery you're entitled to is to view the ballot. The only discovery you're entitled to, right?
Right.
You're not entitled to anything else. So if you want other records, you have to do what's a public records request.
Right.
Right.
And if anybody out there has ever done public records requests, unless they have some favor that we haven't had the opportunity to
Right.
experience, that can take weeks. It can
Right.
take months.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like in the case of the ballot affidavit envelopes, 2.5 years later and
Right.
thousands of dollars later, you're
Yep.
still litigating it in court. So it's not like you can walk down like you do to get your birth certificate, walk
Mhm.
into a county building, tell them what records you want,
Right.
and they're just going to produce them for a low cost.
Right.
This is a series of email exchanges,
Uh-huh.
and really, in certain cases, leaning on your enemy to provide to you the evidence against themselves,
Right.
because that's essentially what you're doing. You're filing a suit against an elections department, then you're saying, now give me all your records.
Right.
Well, in lack of subpoena for discovery,
Uh-huh.
they're going to drag their feet and get away with what they can. And they've
Right.
proven that, right?
Right. And so when did we file the complaint in Lakeview Hub? That was December 9th, right?
Right.
Right. So the election takes place, election day
Mhm.
is November 8th of 2022. The last day to file the complaint for that election was December 9th.
Right.
That is a ton of work that
Right.
you have to marshal lots of resources. And that's why, again, conservative attorneys get involved in the process. Do not let them intimidate or scare you from being involved in the electoral process, because if we all left the electoral process, as I've said time and time again, Shelby, you know what my two favorite legal words by now are, don't you?
Yes,
What are they?
absolutely. Um, uh, but and however.
But and however, right? If there are no conservative attorneys out, sorry, I put you on the spot.
No, but I got it right.
You got it right. You get an A. And so, if there are no conservative attorneys out there, when the leftist attorney says, well, X, Y, and Z, if there's no conservative attorney out there to say but or however, then the leftist attorney wins every time and our elections are gone.
Right.
Once our elections are controlled by the laws, the rules that they want to govern them by, it's all over.
Right.
It's all over. And if you're afraid to get involved, right, you're just going to be another layer of the onion, right? Because they might peel my layer of the onion now. They're going to get to your layer of the onion because they know you're a conservative attorney, right? Just because you're hiding doesn't mean anything.
Well, and I would hope that conservative attorneys have learned that elections have consequences.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, if we look at what has happened to conservative attorneys across the board under an unfriendly administration, not just when it comes to elections, but when it comes to defending conservative clients, when it comes to defending executive orders, defending conservative law that's enacted, all of these things are affected by who's in control, who's in power. And that all stems from our elections, right? So if we don't have a free and fair election to begin with, then we're just moving further and further from fair, reasonable justice system.
Right. And so getting sort of back to, elections, they're very, as you said, very technical, right?
Yes.
Our voter registration database, people check in on a computer, right? Called a poll book.
Absolutely.
Right? And so you go into your polling place, and we know, was it which election was it that the e-poll book shut down? You couldn't go vote.
That was the primary in 2024.
The primary in 2024, the e-poll books shut down.
Right.
Right. And then
that was
it also happened in Tucson.
What was the software?
Gosh.
CrowdStrike.
CrowdStrike, yeah.
CrowdStrike.
Yeah. And so, all of this talk about our systems not being on the internet, right? It's still out there in the cloud, folks. It's all the same cloud. It might be parked in a different space in the cloud. Right? Its own little cloud.
Right.
Right. And then you got the main internet web cloud up here.
And for Kamala Harris,
it's still the cloud.
It's not a rain cloud. He's not saying a rain cloud. You don't need an umbrella.
Yeah.
It's a space.
It's just it's this space in this huge connected network of servers. It's occupied by Maricopa County Elections Department that the internet passes through. They all happen on these interconnected servers. It's very technical, right? Very, very highly technical. Most people don't have that technical skill. Most lawyers don't.
Right. And even if you do, as a member of the public, and in these election challenges, you are a member of the public, just like any other citizen. Even if you had the technical capability to understand where and how things would go wrong, many of these things you have limited access to, even in the sphere of public records. and that's a conversation for a whole another day. But they've actually outlawed certain public records
Right.
to even further conceal this complexity,
Right.
right?
Right. And so, everything's happening now within a computer space that you're not given access to, right? They can give us access to the ballots, which, I mean, during the Lake v. Hobbs matter, we requested access to the ballots because we thought there was something hinky going on with the printers, right?
Right, and there was.
And the tabulators not being able to read ballot printers. And so okay, what, nobody heard what I said?
No, it didn't pick up in the mic. Go ahead and repeat it.
I moved away from them. I apologize, audience out there. Okay, but what was I talking about?
You were talking about you did review the ballot.
Right, we reviewed the ballots because we thought something very hinky was taking place
Right.
with respect to the printers.
Right, the
And then,
printers and or the tabulators, but
Right.
we knew there was an issue one way or the other.
well, we were pretty clear that the issue was the printers because we had a chance to observe a ballot that we had obtained.
Right, the spoiled ballot
a
that
spoiled
people had
ballot.
held on to.
Right.
Mhm.
And they were not the correct size. So
Right.
we knew that the printers were printing missized ballots that the tabulators could not read.
Right.
And they could not read them whether they're down at MC Tech or whether they're at a vote center.
Well, and I'm glad you
Right.
pointed that out because I do want to point out that was another lie that we
Uh-huh.
heard from the election officials
Right.
in regards to 2022 is they said, oh, yeah, we had all these problems at the poll centers, but when we
Right.
took those ballots to the super high-powered central
Yeah.
count tabulators,
Uh-huh.
they were able to read them just fine.
Right.
Not true.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Go ahead,
Sorry,
Steve.
bullshit.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. There's no way that a ballot that wasn't read properly in one place would be read differently in another place, and nor would we want that
Right.
because we
there's-
want the programs to be consistent and
Right.
the same, right?
Right.
So
And-
I just a side note on
and,
that.
And by law, they have to be consistent in the same.
Correct.
Right. And so if you take a ballot that's misconfigured in terms of size, then the timing marks are off, and everything on these systems is set up to read timing marks and the distance between those timing marks. And if it can't, then it won't tabulate that ballot.
Right, because a lot of people. I just want to point this out. A lot of people believe
Mhm.
that these are like giant scanners, and
Right.
that these giant scanners read what you've put on your ballot. It's not like that. They're reading, marking positions in relation to the timing marks on the side. So
Right.
the computer is reading coding.
Mhm.
They're not reading the words. So if you marked a bubble and it was next to candidate B, but you wanted candidate A, and you wrote that on your ballot, it's not going to know that. The computer
Correct.
reads based on those timing marks.
Right. And the bubbles are actually marked.
Right.
Right.
They're positioned
Right.
according to the timing marks.
Right. And so you have the timing marks that it frames everything in. And then it's like like the old computer punch cards. Right?
Exactly. Yes.
You would feed it through and it would look where the missing piece was.
Right.
Right. And then it would code that, right, for a certain thing because it was missing the tab.
Right.
It's not, it's reading the missing tab. It's just like the hanging chad in Florida, right?
Right.
Yeah, it couldn't tabulate the ballot properly because the chad wasn't all the way pushed out. So there wasn't a missing piece per se.
Right.
And so, the technical nature of our elections today from the voter registration database, right? It is all electronic, correct?
Absolutely.
The way the ballot is printed on behalf of a specific voter, has to pull information, the voter registration database, or what do they call it? Poll book, e-poll book?
The e-poll books
Right.
have to communicate with the printer to
Right.
tell it which ballot definition needs
Uh-huh.
to be generated based on the voter's registration. So it's all
Right.
interconnected.
Right. And so the registration is, specific to the address of the voter because it's got to give you specific um, races on which to count your ballot. Right.
Correct.
And so if your address has you in a specific school district, but it's not reading it and pulling it correctly and it's giving you a different school district, then you're voting in a jurisdiction in which you shouldn't be voting in because there was an error in the e-poll book communicating with the printer.
And we have seen this.
Yeah, we've seen that.
Historically, we've seen this
Right.
happen. People go into a poll
Uh-huh.
booth and they realize that they have the wrong ballot because they see that the candidates are not the candidates that they saw maybe on a golden ticket or that they
Right.
had saw campaigning.
hmm
And if they bring it to the attention of the poll workers, they can oftentimes get a new ballot.
Right.
But people don't always know, right? Unfortunately,
Well,
we
I'm sure
have
most people don't know.
people may go in and vote a wrong
Right.
ballot and not even recognize that it's the wrong ballot.
And never know that it was the wrong ballot.
Right.
Yeah. So my coffee didn't brew right. Oh, how sad.
Mhm.
But anyway, and so the technical nature, if all you can request in discovery is to review the ballots,
And it's not all the ballot, right? It's just a portion of the ballots. You
portion
can't
of the
sit and look at
ballots,
all
right,
2 million ballots in
Right.
Maricopa County. It's
Right,
just a small sampling.
right,
And you
so,
almost have to know what samples you need to look at
right.
as well.
Yeah, and so the defendants in Lake v. Hobbs wanted to know which precincts we wanted to look at, and we wouldn't tell them because that would give them then the ability to do something. And Maricopa County was clearly taking the position that their elections were just fine and there's nothing to see here, and the winners were the winners, and too bad for everybody else, right?
Right.
And so, Maricopa County, in my view, really, really took a defensive posture in Lake v. Hobbs after the 2022 elections, in all of the election challenges, took a very defensive posture. Now, the government officials, shouldn't have a dog in the fight,
Right.
right? They should be unbiased. They should be, nonpartisan. Their attorneys, at the county attorney's office, shouldn't stand up in court and say, "Wow, it's their own darn fault for telling people to vote on election day," right?
Let me give you an example to that because
Yeah.
Brian, I think that's a really good point that people need to understand. When you challenge petition signatures,
Mhm.
so a candidate who has to go out and get signatures to be printed on the ballot,
Right.
the Secretary of State and the county recorders
Mhm.
of whatever county and jurisdiction those came from,
Mhm.
they are named in the lawsuit against the candidate. So
Right.
if you go and you get petitions and you file to run for a seat and I challenge you,
Right.
it's you and I against each other.
Right.
But the county and the Secretary of State are also named as defendants, similar, almost
Right.
identical. It is identical to an election challenge.
It is.
But the counties and the Secretary of States do not argue in those cases. They are fact finders.
Right.
Their only role is to validate your claims based on the evidence
Right.
and generate a report.
Right.
So if I say you forged 300 signatures
Uh-huh.
on those petitions, and I say which 300, and I
Right.
have to specify,
Uh-huh.
the county will look at those 300 and say, well, 250 of them were forged, but we found 50 of them valid, period.
Right.
That is their only involvement, is to be arbiters of facts.
Right.
Why is it that election challenges are treated so different by
Yeah.
these county attorneys and these elected officials? I
Yeah.
agree with you. In
Yeah.
Lake v. Hobbs, it's Lake suing Katie Hobbs saying, I
Right.
don't believe you actually won.
Uh-huh.
And they should just be the fact finders of evidence. Would you not say?
And I would agree 100%. And I think that this is where the state legislature needs to take some action to change the laws, to sort of maybe make the election department the finder of fact, and put some requirements on the elections department to produce records relating to the election and the specific election challenge, right? And
Absolutely.
so if I'm making an election challenge on the basis of 500 fraudulent voters and I lost by 499 votes, then it should be incumbent upon the election department, and I'm saying which voters they were, just like in a signature challenge. It should be incumbent upon the election department to produce all information related to those ballots, especially if they're ballot affidavit envelopes, so that the parties can artfully argue in court rather than the county taking this position that everything we did was fine and kosher when we know it wasn't. To
And
the
it goes
extent
beyond that,
to the
right?
extent that people were actually, I would say, playing very fast and loose with the truth in Lake v. Hobbs in an effort to defend the work they had done during the election. Right? It was almost as
Right.
if, and this is sort of getting back to, I think this is where we bring in, Steph and Richer,
Right.
right? Because we have emails and calendar entries for Steph and Richer that show States United was sort of brought in to brief the elections department.
Right.
We know that Katie Hobbs's campaign, because campaign email is listed in Richard's
Right.
email,
They were also partaking in these pre-election
Right.
meetings.
as well as Adrian Fontes,
Yes.
his campaign email participating in these pre-election meetings. You don't see anybody from Kari Lake
or
invited,
Fencham running
or
for
Fincham,
Secretary of State.
or
Right.
Abe Hamaday invited and participating in these elections and know
Right.
what's going on. So it's almost like from the outset, the people who were anti-MAGA were sort of consolidated in an effort to run our elections in a highly partisan manner. Right?
Absolutely.
And so that's part of the problem. And then what we see is during Lake v. Hobbs, the county attorneys and the elections department taking a very hostile approach to, the Lake election challenge, and in essence siding with Katie Hobbs in that case, as well as Abe Hamaday's, what's the name of your
Chris Mays.
crazy AG?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
So we're going to unpack some of the stuff in the Kari Lake trial.
Yeah.
And I hope that even if you followed it from beginning to end, this is all stuff you believe you've heard before, that
Right.
you will stay tuned. You will listen to this again, because it is so important that we keep reminding ourselves we lived through those cases. And when I say lived through them, it was like a flash of light, because you
Mhm.
don't sleep.
Right.
We lived in a conference room where we were working pretty much around the clock. I don't think the attorneys slept at all.
Mhm.
And I can sit down and read those transcripts today and see things in those transcripts that I didn't see 3 years ago.
Yeah.
I can see things and I'm like, holy cow, this really happened. So there's always new information, especially as time evolves and the more and more we understand elections, then we see more of those things. And so some
Right.
of the things we're going to point out today are new. Some of them are old, but we're going to look at
Right.
it in a different way.
Yeah.
And for those of you that have not yet seen, we had the opportunity to participate in a documentary
Yeah.
regarding the Kari Lake trials, and it's called State of Denial, Arizona.
Mhm.
And if you have not watched that, it's free to watch. It's available online, and it's a 1-hour documentary. And I can tell you firsthand, personally, I know people that believed our elections were fine, everything was good, watched this documentary and became believers and woke up to the fact that our elections are vulnerable and they can be stolen.
Right.
Steve, would you please play the trailer for State of Denial just for those people? It's only a minute long for people that have not seen it. Yes, number 1, please.
Voters are already lining up at the polls in what looks like a record-breaking turnout for Arizona.
The polls were close in 2020 and yet again here in 2022.
Things started off pretty well.
Right now, votes that are coming in are going our way.
And then went downhill from there.
Maricopa County seems to be having trouble.
The lines were outside the building.
One of the tabulators is not working.
Well, nothing's working.
She tried to vote and her ballot was rejected 20 times.
7,000 rejections every 30 minutes.
There are still hundreds of thousands of ballots left to be counted.
Still being counted.
For it to happen now is kind of strange.
Can people be confident their vote will count?
There is a feeling that something's not right.
And we looked at the video footage. The math doesn't add up.
Why did they scan in more ballots than they have record of receiving?
Such egregious mismatches.
We found voter registrations that had no signature.
They removed the seals.
Remove the memory cards, which is breaking the law.
Day one of the two-day trial.
Clay, what did you find out? I saw it in the war room. It's a different process for Election Day.
There's no other process for Election Day spelled out in the law.
4 times he denied that never could occur.
So are you changing your testimony?
Scott, why are you running from us?
Were you coached by legal counsel?
Constant messaging of deny, deny, deny.
Scott, how do you boldly lie like that?
All right. So, it's interesting. And just, again, I want to reiterate to people, Election Day was November 8th, the last day for us to file a complaint in Lake v. Hobbs, given all of these technical issues with the election of 2022, was December 9th, when we filed the complaint in Lake v. Hobbs. Trial, the very first trial was December 21, right? So you have these highly technical issues. You have to prepare for trial
in 12 days,
right?
While fighting to get records, experts analyze things, right? Schedule appointments to view ballot.
Right. And so it happened very fast. Ironically, Lake v. Hobbs lasted for over 2 years. It was the Supreme Court rejected our final appeal. The day after the day after the 2020, God, what year is this? The day after the 2024 election.
2024 election,
right,
was when they finally rejected our last appeal.
Yeah, and so Lake v. Hobbs lasted, virtually 2 years, which is unprecedented.
Absolutely.
For an election challenge, and and that's why I'm saying the state legislature needs to sort of remove the county as a partisan participant in election challenges, very much like they do with signature challenges to get on the ballot in the first instance, and compel Maricopa County or any county in the state of Arizona to produce relevant records, to an opposing party making a challenge.
Absolutely.
Because that's absolutely necessary in the highly technical nature of our elections today. They still don't know. Well, maybe they know, who knows? They have still never made it public, have they? What happened to the printers in 2022?
Well, if you remember, they appointed a special master,
right,
a former judge who supposedly did an analysis of what went on, but the analysis that was provided in regards to what happened didn't match reality. Right. And they tried to blame Okie printers. Well, there's 2 big problems with that. Okie came back and said, you're not going to pen this on us, and here's how we can prove it's not our fault.
Right.
But in addition, they didn't just use Okie printers in that election, and printers that were from other manufacturers experienced the same issues.
Right.
They really only addressed the ink lifting, the overheating, and the ink lifting, which was due to having this ink on such a thick paper, right? But that didn't answer any of the questions on how all of these printers, their settings were changed to shrink to fit. So there were multiple issues and multiple layers. So, I mean, the whole thing was kind of another effort at gaslighting the American public and the citizens of Maricopa.
And so, it's interesting. We also have, um, signature verification was a huge issue. It still is, right? We the people has a case currently pending before the Maricopa County Superior Court with respect to signature verification, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to still obtain the 2022 ballot affidavit envelopes. We were able to analyze 2020. We believe we're going to find absolutely similar patterns in 2022 that occurred in 2020 because we saw no effort to improve the system by Stephen Richer after he took over. And again, we're in a situation too where the county is wanting, and I know you can't, you're limited maybe in some of the things you can talk about, but they're wanting to actually seal some of our exhibits from the public in that case, which is highly concerning to me because everything we've put forward is a matter of public record already. But it'll be interesting. I believe we should have these ballot affidavit envelopes. Excuse me. I believe that it's a public record and any citizen should have access to review them. And I will maintain that regardless of what the courts say. But even if they want to restrict that to repertorial agencies, I think we've proven our case that we are as much a repertorial agency as any other investigative journalist style reporting, And I think President Trump made big moves in helping to validate independent media, which is, God bless him for that. And we cannot allow that to go the other way, We cannot allow them to try and say CNN is more relevant news than, say War Room, Bannon's War Room, Because we get back in that space and I think we're going to dumb down society even more so.
The only reason I think CNN, MSNBC, and many of these news organizations still exist, they're pharmaceutical marketing. Pharmaceutical marketing.
Yeah.
If they were to do to pharmaceuticals, which they should do, what they did to tobacco, Because, watch TV, watch a show, how many times are you seeing pharmaceutical commercials, especially during COVID? The ads were off the charts during COVID, These are significant payouts to media who then can afford all of these very highly partisan, supposed comedians who are just a bunch of partisan hacks wearing a comics hat. They're generally not even funny. And so if we were to abolish marketing by pharmaceutical companies as a tool to advance public health in the United States, you would see a lot of these mainstream media companies falter even more than they're faltering now.
That is a really good point. I remember back in the day when they kind of banned the Marlboro Man, right? And they said you can no longer advertise your tobacco products.
They even had to take it off of NASCARs, right?
Yes.
That's free advertising that Marlboro is getting, so we got to take it off the stock cars, right?
So if we look at Big Pharma and say that, their own commercials say it, right? They'll be like, oh, take this drug and your eyelashes will grow long, but you could go blind, get explosive diarrhea, faint, have a heart attack. But at least with tobacco, they're like, you could get lung cancer. They have like 75 disclaimers.
Right. Did you see the study that came out of, I think it was South Korea, about the COVID-19 vaccines?
No, I did not.
All cancers combined, those people who were vaccinated have a 20+% a higher incidence of cancer if you're talking about colon cancer, it's 60+%. Breast cancer is way up there.
Well,
Um,
I'm going to tell you that my sister, my mom,
Mhm.
and my dad, really great conservatives,
Yeah.
good people, but like many, including President Trump, didn't know what they
Right.
didn't know in the beginning,
Right.
and they got vaccinated.
Yeah.
Out of
Yeah.
my dad, my mom,
Uh-huh.
and my sister got
Right.
breast cancer, and my mom got a rare blood cancer,
Right.
like within
Right.
months of the whole vaccination.
Right.
So I'm a believer that
Yeah.
these vaccines
Yeah.
are killing people.
I I think the science that's coming out is starting to show that. But where were we anyway? Well, I was going to talk about signature verification, right? The highly technical nature of our elections requires a turn, I guess, to science to sort of figure them out, right?
Yes.
But does the Maricopa County Attorney's Office believe that like signature verification is a science?
Oh no, it's a I think his exact words were it's subjective.
It's subjective.
It's subjective. You may look at a
Right.
signature and think one thing, and I may look at a signature and think another thing.
Right.
So if we look at signature verification, which they claim to be an authentic way to validate identity,
Right.
has no science
Right.
behind it.
Right.
It kind of blows their whole argument, but we saw this through and through. We saw the contradiction, right? And I want to play video too when we can get a chance, so that we can let people hear
Right.
the county attorney in his own words.
Let's
Right?
hear it. This
Yeah,
video
I think
too,
that would be a
Steve.
good thing. Steve,
Yeah.
put that up for us.
Signatures did not match in 2020, and that's the type of challenge that they're bringing here. That again, Your Honor, means they're shifting back to, they're making challenges to signature determinations. And as we said in our papers, that's a very subjective process. Two people might look at a signature and one might say, I think that's consistent, and another might say, no, that's inconsistent. And there's no bright line
2 hours later.
rule in the law that says when a signature is or is not consistent. This is something of an art in election verification work. It's not really a hard and fast science.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious. I mean, nobody wants me to be an artist. Like, I can't draw, definitely can't sing, right? So, if I'm not an artist, and what if I get hired to do signature verification? I think we're in trouble, Brian. Oh,
Oh gosh. Wow, I got to start all over, and I don't remember a darn thing I said.
you were talking about Valenzuela.
Oh.
I think that's a great place for you to
Yeah,
jump in.
Mr. Valenzuela testified during Lake v. Hobbs that for early voters, quote, the signature is considered proof of identity, unquote.
Right.
Right. That's like, your driver's license, your signature is who you are.
Right.
Right. It represents you.
Right.
And so you would think that the county would want a little bit more than simple art in validating these signatures. Okay.
Okay. So producer Steve found a video that he thinks is relevant. So he's
Yeah,
going to
this
throw
was
that up.
Only just scary 'cause
courtesy
I don't know what it
Thurston
is.
Manos.
Oh, here we go. Mm. Yeah, and so um, yeah, the signature is exceptionally important. Again, Mr. Valenzuela testified that the purpose of signature verification, quote, on the highest level is to provide proof of identity. And I'm reading this directly from a complaint we're getting ready to file against Maricopa County in the signature verification, related to signature verification in that entire process. But, but it's interesting that in the highly technical nature of our elections, when proof of your identification is so important, you go to the polls. Do they give you a ballot if you can't prove who you are?
No, I mean, they at least require you show proof of address
Right.
and identity at
Right.
the polls, right?
Right. And so um, it's very important because we want to know that the people who are voting are actually the people, registered to vote. Right.
But how do you feel about that, Brian, that hypocrisy? Because I think I can't say it enough, and I want to keep pointing this out
Mhm.
often in the show. In one breath, they say mail-in ballot is completely safe.
Right.
Signature verification is absolutely perfect
Yeah.
because this is how we confirm
Right.
that a ballot's not fraudulent.
Uh-huh.
Well, at the same time, when you question that they're not doing it
Right.
the right way, because there is a right way to
Right.
do it. Our
Right.
banks do it, right?
Right.
Property fraud investigators do it.
Right.
So there is a way to properly do it. Um, then they say, well, what do you expect, Judge? It's kind of an art,
Right.
You may interpret this as the person, and the guy next to you may interpret it as fraud.
Right.
Who cares?
Yeah, who knows? It's the why even bother doing it?
Right.
Is the whole question.
Right.
And I think that's what happened in 2020. Right, is that most of them weren't actually just done by human beings.
Right. And
They
I
were
think
processed.
the timing data showed that, right?
Right.
When you can see the
Right.
number of ballots that were processed with
Right.
zero exceptions,
Uh-huh.
over 1 million ballots, and not one bad signature. Come
Right.
on.
Right.
Give me a break.
Right.
There's just no way.
Right. And so it's interesting, but it should be more scientific now. Do you know if any more rigorous standards are being incorporated by the new recorder?
So I have
Anything you
heard.
can talk about?
Yeah, absolutely. I have heard that the new Maricopa County Recorder, Justin
Right.
Heem, is implementing a new system
Uh-huh.
that would require all files or batches.
Right.
So they usually do batches of like 250.
Mm-hmm.
After one person is done verifying the disposition on those, so say out of 250, I say
Right.
20 of them are fraudulent.
Right.
That batch
Uh-huh.
is then reassigned to somebody of a different political party,
Yeah.
and then they do the review, and the ones that don't match
Uh-huh.
get a second level of scrutiny. So
Right.
if you're a speed flicker and you're accepting everything, and then I
Right.
go through and I reject some, it's kind of a second layer
Uh-huh.
to make sure that those
Right.
get caught. And that's done bipartisanly. I think it solves a part of the problem. I
Right.
don't think it goes as far as it needs to. I mean, but for me, as far as it needs to, is we need to eliminate mail-in ballots, right? So
Right.
you're never going to get
Yeah.
where I want you to be
Right.
until we eliminate mail-in ballots.
Well, another huge advantage to doing that, and I would have to, give Justin Heap a great deal of credit for this, is that it's really a check and a balance, right? If somebody's rejecting no ballots and they're just hitting enter, and then somebody from the other team is looking at those same signatures, they can then compare, right? They can look at the data in real time. The management staff doing signature verification look at the data in real time and say, is this guy doing his job? Right.
Well, and I hope they do that.
I hope
I
they do
don't
too.
have the confidence that will
Right.
actually occur.
Right.
But it is good that we have that ability.
Right.
I mean, the reason why I say that is when we got the timing data that we dealt with in 2022,
Right.
they didn't even know how to generate the data.
Right.
So the idea that they would use it for anything to oversee management,
Right.
I don't. But maybe we need to get that information to Recorder Heap
Right.
and say now you're going to have the analytics to see if you have somebody who's consistently wrong,
Right.
so that you can remove them from that position.
Right.
And they may not have even thought about that yet, to be honest. But I'm hoping they do use that in that way. I think that would be great.
Well, Recorder Heap, if you haven't thought about it yet, if you've got one person that rejects 0 ballots out of 250 and then it goes to the other person and they reject 30 of them, compare those signatures and you'll be able to tell very quickly if the first person, that approved all of those signatures is actually even looking at them. And then look at the timing data with respect to how often they're hitting enter, which is a huge point. We have a video. How long is this video that we have of user number 134?
I don't think it's very long, maybe about a minute or so, minutes, 2 minutes. But and I know a lot of people have seen it. It's absolutely one of my favorites.
Yeah, it's a good video.
This video went
I like
viral.
it. Yeah.
Number 3.
So this is one of our videos. Yeah,
Well,
number.
I tell you what, while
Hold
you
on.
play it, I've had too much coffee, so I'm going to take a break real
There you
quick.
go.
And I will run.
Okay,
Okay, play the video. What number is it?
3.
Real quick, I just wanted to point out, because the title of today includes the gaslighting and lies from the county. And one of the biggest nuances to their gaslighting was reframing what our claims were, right? They took the fact that we said that they weren't doing signature verification the way they should be doing it. In essence, meaning they're not actually doing signature verification. If you're not doing it right, then you're not doing it right. They took that and turned it to be literal and put out to the public. This went out to all major news networks and was reported to the public that Kari Lake is claiming that they're not doing signature verification. And then they would show pictures and video of the rooms of people doing signature verification. Yeah, they're sitting there going through the process. They're physically doing something that they're calling signature verification. The problem is we can clearly see in the video and by the time signatures of each individual exception for each or each time they accept a signature or deny a signature, we have those recorded. Their system records every keystroke when you move to another signature, right? And so there was a nuance in the gaslighting there where they decided that because we were claiming they weren't doing it properly, that they started saying that we were claiming that they weren't doing it at all. And it's just because you're physically going through the motions doesn't mean you're effectively doing the job properly, right? And so that was a major part of the gaslighting.
Well, and another part of the gaslighting was, we talked about process before, right?
Right.
When they announced the process. Was this process ever announced?
No.
For example, was the process ever announced that they were not going to signature verify the early in-person ballot affidavit envelope? I don't think so, right? When we talk about chain of custody, was their process, when you showed that part of the video for the movie,
right? The different process on election day,
right?
Where was that? Where was that marked?
Where was that written?
Yeah.
Where was it spelled out that Maricopa County was going to employ a different process that was not allowed for in the law on election day, right? And so that's part of that gaslighting that was going on with Maricopa County. And so,
Absolutely.
again, that's why we need the intervention of the legislature to sort of change the way these election challenges happen, to take the county out of sort of the picture as being a partisan on behalf of you know certain candidates in upholding an election. They shouldn't have a dog in the race. They shouldn't have
Agreed.
right. And so but
I
anyway,
agree.
did you play the video?
No, not yet.
Oh.
Do you want to go ahead and do that, Steve?
Yeah.
Yes, number 3.
Wake up! Hey, just a minute. What's going on here? Oh, yes. Oh, here we are. Well, I guess I will have a little glass of water after all. It's quite a tasty drink.
3, 2, 1, fight! Flawless victory.
So
Yeah.
I just want to apologize for I take a lot of joy in making some of these videos, and I take some creative liberty because I find humor helps to understand the truth a little bit, and I'm also criticizing and ridiculing the process that they try to defend that is obviously flawed and fatally flawed and ineffective, right?
Mhm.
So I don't know. I can't help it. When I made that video, I turned the guy into Mr. Magoo, trying to protect
Yeah.
his identity, and it just made sense to do it that way. So
Well, and this user 134, do you remember how many ballots in total he approved? In excess of 50,000, wasn't it?
Oh my goodness, yes.
Do we still
He-
have that chart?
I actually do. I don't have it handy right now.
Where is it?
We have a digital copy, and then we have the bigger version at our other office. We'll have to bring it over.
Oh, it's still over there.
Yeah,
I thought
so-
it was here, but yeah. Interesting. And so he approved, I believe it was over 50,000, was it?
Yes. And many of them at obvious, I mean, you could see in the
Right.
video at hyperspeed. But this was another example, wasn't it? I mean, 134 was quite the conversation during the
Yeah.
trial.
Yeah.
And this is another case where they tried to gaslight the public
Right.
in many ways about this. And there's testimony by Valenzuela
Mhm.
under direct examination
Mhm.
when Liddy questions him.
Right.
And then there's a different take on the same lines of questioning
Uh-huh.
when you
Mhm.
question him at trial.
Right.
And you can see the discrepancy
Right.
in his claims between those two testimonies.
Mhm.
Can we go ahead and put that up?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'd love to do it. Steve, can you put up number 4? So during the direct examination, when County Attorney Liddy is questioning Valenzuela about what he believes is happening in the videos, they ask about the review of the ballot. And he says that he believes that the man in the video was just double checking his work or doing what's called a review. So they'll go through 250 ballots.
Right.
And once they disposition them all, then they go back through and just double check. Right. So he says, are you aware for a batch of ballots, 250 ballots, envelopes are sent on to level 2. That level 1 reviewer is told to go back through that batch and make sure that what they marked is what they meant to mark.
I have no way of knowing whether that took place or not.
Right.
In other words, it's like, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Valenzuela is saying, what are you talking about?
Right.
Right.
But then later, when questioned about it, he says, oh, yeah, they always review their work. Now, Steve, go ahead and put up number 5. Now, when you question him about that, because you say, oh, okay, did you have time to review the data now? Because the first day of testimony, he said, I didn't get a chance to look at anything. And you're like, well, you've had the evidence. Why don't you look at it? Right. And so you question him on day 2. And this is really important. You said, okay, and so you've had a chance to look at your own data now, right? Does going back through and looking at any keystrokes? And he said, it does not. Unless you change something, you can. You have the option to say, oh, that should have been a reject or exception or a good signature.
Right.
Maybe, right? And at the bottom, if you look at the bottom, he answers you because you say, okay, so if you're going back and reviewing the 250 signatures, and this is the hypothetical, right? It wouldn't suddenly become in the data 250 in 500 seconds. And he said, correct. It's not part of the data because you're not setting a disposition.
Right.
So we took that timing data. Chris got the timing data. Steve pulled the camera footage. And they painstakingly matched every keystroke with the video.
Right.
According to Valenzuela's own testimony, we could not have possibly done that. It would have been impossible to do that if he was reviewing instead of dispositioning.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Because even, and this is an example of, when Mr. Valenzuela was asked that question on direct, and he's like, what are you talking about? Right? They do these 250 dispositions, and Mr. Liddy was sort of, I guess, leading him down the path. Well, then they go back and double check their work, right?
Right. And I remember you actually objected to that, saying he's leading the witness,
right,
Your Honor.
And so,
what do you?
But Mr. Valenzuela was like, well, it's kind of like the name of the little show I do on Twitter, right? What the fuck's up? It's like, that's basically was Mr. Valenzuela's response. What are you talking about?
Right.
Right. And then the next day, he's talking about these reviews of dispositions.
Right.
Right. But he's admitting that, it would not add an additional keystroke.
Right.
Because they're not, unless they change a disposition. Right. And so the timing, is what the timing is. But what I think is phenomenal about this data that we were able to get about Maricopa County elections is it shows that Maricopa County has had in its possession data that it could use to evaluate the performance of employees. Right? But did Maricopa County ever use that data?
Well, the interesting thing is they claimed that they actually did review performances of employees when questioned. And I don't remember if it was Kurt Olsen questioning Jared.
They do an audit.
Right. However, we can show that they had never even generated this data until we public records requested it as we the people.
They didn't know they didn't even know about this data. So,
Right.
Chris, our computer guru, had to walk them through how to create a report for this very specific data, indicating they've never used it before. But if you want to know if your employees are simply, if they're taking their job seriously and they're conscientiously evaluating signatures, or if they're simply collecting a paycheck and hitting enter, 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 as it appears that user 134 was, then you would think they'd want to use this data. But Maricopa County, I think they gave it to us not knowing exactly what it was.
Oh, I believe that wholeheartedly. I don't think they understood what we
Right.
were going to be able to do with the
Right.
data,
Right.
and it backed them into a corner.
Yeah.
Unfortunately for us, we know that there's a lot stacked against us in the
Yeah.
election challenge arena.
Yeah.
But I'm very pleased with what we've been able to show publicly.
Right.
Now, they claim that they're very conscientious in making sure that the employees that are working at MTech
Right.
are performing up to speed.
Uh-huh.
And if they're not performing up to speed,
Yeah.
then they get rid of them, right?
Well, it's like this user 134, right, that we keep talking about. We used, I don't know if it was that exact video that Kurt Olson played during his opening statement, or if it was a different video. Was it a different video or the same video?
It was the same video, but I believe we just blurred the face. We didn't
Right.
do the
Right.
the comedy
cartoon face. Right.
cartoon part of it,
Right.
but it was the same exact video compared to
Right.
with the report compared to the data.
Right. And that's I'm going to point this out really quickly that Maricopa County under Stephen Richer made, and the old board of supervisors made a very, very concerted effort to make it appear as if we the people simply puts out information that's going to harm or jeopardize people, right?
Right.
We know who user 134 is, don't we?
Oh, absolutely we do.
Have we ever put his name out?
No.
And all the video we've ever used, you can't identify him because his face is either blurred or covered by a cartoon character, correct? And so, we the people goes to great pains to ensure that, we're not just putting stuff out there that are going to put people in harm's way, right? Because we don't want their neighbors yelling at them or, anything like that. So I just wanted to point that out. But getting back to your point that they claim that they evaluate employees, and when they're not doing their job, they take them off of line. And in fact, in response to Mr. Olson's opening statement, Maricopa County Attorney Thomas Liddy made that very same claim. We're having
A production production discussion.
Right.
Steve's prepping this video for us. So.
All right. And so, Mr. Liddy, Maricopa County Attorney, arguing for Maricopa County, the defendants actually stated in his opening statement that this gentleman we identify as user 134 was taken offline.
Well,
right.
Brian, since we're waiting on Steve anyways, I want to digress and talk a little bit about Liddy, because we talk about potential perjury, gaslighting by Stephen Richer during the trial,
right?
By Valenzuela by the trial, definitely by Scott Jarrett during the trial. We had gaslighting, and Ryan Macias was another one that
he was reading his testimony.
Yes, somebody was spoon feeding him the answers during the trial, right? So we saw a lot of that, but it's less common, isn't it? And maybe I'm wrong. You would know better because you kind of live in this world, but it would seem to me less common to find hostility and gaslighting and straight up what I consider lies and perjury by the attorneys themselves. Isn't that something that's less common?
That's very much less common as it should be,
Right.
right? And so, when representations are being made, and I remember this issue specifically because I asked Mr. Valenzuela specifically. We even tried to get the court to intervene and get this employee's employment records so that we could determine whether or not he was actually moved offline. When in fact we knew he wasn't. Correct.
That is correct. We knew all along because the video and the timing data
Right.
told us the whole employment story.
Right. And this guy now, according to Ray Valenzuela, if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, signature verification ended on November 11th. They finished the process of signature verification on November 11th, correct?
That's when they ended the phase one.
Okay.
Stage one of signature verification. So
Right.
the initial disposition reviews
Right.
ended on the 11th, and
Right.
all that was left then was management and curing.
Right.
Yes.
And so just to sort of draw a distinction then, you have signature verification, which is, the users verifying signatures, and then that phase basically ends. You have signatures that were rejected, and then curing begins.
Correct.
Right, which is to cure any defective signatures.
Which is not what user 134 was doing. He was doing
Correct.
that first line signature verification, phase one, through the 11th.
Through the 11th. So he was never taken off of signature verification until it ended.
That is correct.
And all other signature verification employees were let go. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Well, they were either let go
Uh-huh.
or they were reallocated.
And he was reallocated.
He was reallocated into curing. So he wasn't even one of the ones that was let go when they shut down phase one. He was
ready,
reassigned. And so Steve, can you put up number 7? Oh, never mind. Okay, we're still working on that video. So the long story short of it, to kill time, but I think this is also incredibly important. We had another instance similar to user 134 that we're going to point out when it came to Attorney Liddy.
Right.
In that there was an employee that responded to a public records request by Heather Honey in regards to chain of custody when we were searching for the remainder of the chain of custody documents.
Right.
And this person stated that we cannot locate the documents.
Right.
And when that was brought, no, I want. Okay, so sorry, I lost my train of thought now. So when that was brought forward to the court as evidence, Liddy stated that the employee wasn't even an employee, and they didn't know who that person was.
Right.
Even though we had evidence that not only was she an employee of the county, she was a predominant public relations employee for the county.
A very significant employee. In fact, she was such a managerial level public relations type employee that I can guarantee you that nothing from her department went out without pre-approval from Maricopa County Attorney's Office. Right, because you're having approved public statements about the election and electoral process. So I'm guessing they knew one another. It would just be a guess. But that level of staff member putting things out in a public facing role would play a very close role with counsel. I mean, it's just like our organization when we put stuff out. Right, I'm your attorney, and so we talk about it. What do we want to put out, and what don't we want to put out?
And our whole core team knows.
But I think what Mr. Liddy said is we don't have anybody by that name in Maricopa County Elections Public Records Department, right? But if you go back to that period in time, Maricopa County didn't have a public record.
That's correct.
right? They would get a public records in and assign it to a managerial level employee, right? And for example, I've filled in the past public records requests by Heather Honey, in which I went to MC Tech and was met by Ray Valenzuela, right? A co-director of
or
elections.
there were times
who
Eileen
provided the
Haber
documents. Eileen
was
Haber
involved,
was
right?
involved, right? And so this employee who was said to really not exist, it was completely disingenuous,
Right.
and then the issue becomes, I mean, why, if Maricopa County had nothing to hide, why'd they go to such extremes to conceal the chain of custody records that show that
Right.
Maricopa County completely on election day completely failed to adhere to their policies regarding chain of custody,
Right.
which wasn't procedural. They simply failed to follow the law, and they didn't notify anybody in advance that they had no intention of following the law.
So we have that with Liddy, which is clearly, at minimum, disingenuous,
Right.
as you put it. I think it was more than that. I think it was an intentional move to deceive the court. And the same was true with user 134.
Right.
We clearly knew that they didn't look at their data. They had no idea what was in the evidence, and I'm not sure that they felt threatened by it or even cared. Because if they'd have taken the time to review the evidence,
Right.
they would have known
Oh, no.
that we knew
If you-
everything user 134 had
No,
done.
I agree, but I think they understood the significance of the evidence, which is why they expedited that data for analysis to Data Guru.
Exactly.
Remember, because
Yeah.
Data Guru got hands on that data and was pushing stories favorable for Maricopa County elections.
That were completely
Department.
false and anti,
Right.
completely anti what the data said.
Right.
The data didn't say
Right.
anything that they claimed.
But
And-
what the data showed was user 134 from day one of his employment with Maricopa County until November 11th, when standard signature verification ended, and signature verification employees were either released from employment or transferred over to the curing process. That user 134 was in the same position. So Steve's ready with this video. Go ahead and play.
Okay, go ahead and play number 6. This is Liddy's opening statements about user 134.
And I'm going to apologize. So pre-production, we got a video ready for this. It was the wrong video. It was someone else. It was a clip of someone else's podcast that's unrelated to this and has nothing to do with it. And so I quickly went through, screen captured it with my phone, sent it to myself so I could get it into the production. And that's what delayed this. So I apologize, guys.
And I'm going to really quickly throw a shout out. I think it was Robert Govera. Is that how you pronounce his name? He does a podcast where he looks at legal issues here in Maricopa County.
Yeah.
A fantastic podcast. Everybody should check it out. He does a wonderful job. But we clipped his stuff.
Oh, okay. It wasn't communicated to me that was intentional.
Well, no, I just
so-
want to do a shout out to him. He does
Because
phenomenal
he did a
work.
great job covering the trial.
Yeah.
I have no problem giving someone good props like that.
And
I did
he does a
not
lot
do
of-
any editing on this. This is straight clip off my phone. So are you ready for me to play it?
Yep, go ahead.
It explains everything.
If, in fact, the individual on the left was not doing his job, and as you've heard from counsel in his opening, that all 155 level 1 signature reviewers were being monitored by their supervisors, that individual would have been taken off the line. And, Your Honor, you're going to hear that that individual was taken off the line.
Okay. Was that man removed from the line?
He was removed from the process of signature verification, reassigned from the process.
Okay. When was he reassigned?
Exact date I do not know, but it was not, and if I may, some liberty, was not because of that video or not because he was reviewing as he was required to do. It was just that there's a skill set that's required to perform this function. And if you are not meeting those marks, then we'll move you to another task, whatever that may be.
Right there.
Curing
Pause that,
as an
Steve.
example.
Okay. So in one part of the testimony in the trial, they said this man did nothing wrong.
Did nothing wrong.
But then when he was questioned, he says, "Well, we'll move you off the line if you're not meeting your marks."
Right.
What marks? What marks are they looking at? Because
Right.
we know they're not looking at the correct marks.
Right.
But let's placate. Let's play his game. He's inferring that he wasn't meeting his marks, and that's why he was moved. But
Right.
the data says that's absolutely false. So not only did Liddy lie in the beginning, but even during Valenzuela's testimony, he tried to make it appear that
Right.
this man was somehow disciplined.
Right. For doing something wrong.
Right.
For not performing his job as a signature verifier as we would expect to see. And so, on one hand, you're saying, "Oh yeah, this is the process. He did nothing wrong." But then you're saying, but then on the other,
Right.
hand, you're saying, "Oh, he was punished, right?" And so, which is it?
Right.
Which is it?
Well, we don't know because we didn't
Right.
actually look at an employment file. We're just making
Right.
stuff up. I
Right.
mean, that's essentially what they're saying.
And that's exactly why they would never show us that individual's employment file, because it would show that he was tasked with signature verification from day one of his hire until November 11, when signature verification ended, and then he was transferred to. So this is sort of fudging, right? This is very disingenuous because he was.
Yeah,
Okay,
we
go
can put
ahead.
it back on.
No, go ahead and play it.
I actually stayed professional on this video, so it covers all of this really
Yeah,
good.
go ahead.
But as you sit here today, you can't tell me that when he was reassigned.
I was not anticipating that, so I don't have his HR.
All right.
That individual, to the best of your knowledge, was reassigned to do additional tasks. Recall so testifying?
Yeah.
Have you taken any efforts to learn more about why that individual was reassigned?
Just want to make sure. Liddy said, in case anyone missed it, Your Honor, you're going to see that this individual was taken off the line. That story changes quite a few times. Yeah.
I have.
Why is that? What did you learn?
So for clarity and finding out through our different management level that he was reassigned just like Mr. Myers. I'll use him as a perfect example that he was predominantly assigned, Mr. Myers as an example, to curing, but could and did a few signature verification. This particular individual was assigned to different tasks, SEBs, to curing, all that, but it did not prevent him from assisting in an all hands on deck capacity because he was not necessarily moved out of that position for some sort of error or some sort of inconsistent work product. It was just more to the extent that we shift people as we do, and he was predominantly moved into different tasks.
You guys want to talk about what's happening so far and what you're seeing on the screen?
Is the video over?
No.
Okay.
This video captures almost every single one of their lies through this entire process and how they keep flip-flopping their story. And I can't believe the judge did not go after them for perjury, for how many times they just contradicted themselves one right after the other.
Well, who would typically file perjury charges against somebody who commits perjury? Because this has been a question people have asked me, Brian. On a complete side note, before we finish the video, if somebody commits perjury, whose discretion is it, or decision is it, or how does that even work? How does one be held accountable to perjury? Yeah, your mic's muted.
Well,
There you go.
I mean, the question is, here they're playing this sort of wordsmith game.
Word salad.
Right. What did they never do? They never came forward and said when this person was reassigned. He
Right.
was reassigned, right?
Yes.
He was reassigned to curing when signature verification ended. So in that respect, Mr. Valenzuela was telling the truth, right?
Right.
Because he was reassigned.
Right.
Now the original problem is when they argue that he was taken off the line, and they infer he was taken off the line because he was not doing the job of signature verification properly.
Because
That's
he
the
said
infer.
if what they're claiming this
Right.
video shows, then he would be taken off the line. And Your Honor, you're going to find
Right.
he was taken off the line. So it's
Right.
like we admit that he was doing what they say he was doing, but we took him off the line.
Right.
Well, that backed them in a corner
Right.
because they
Right.
didn't think we were going to expose
Right.
how much we knew
Right.
about what he had done.
Yeah, and so I mean, this brings up the entire problem, the entire problem with an election challenge that I talked about before, that the legislature seriously needs to address, because this testimony and argument took place in May of 2023.
Right.
This was the second Lake v. Hobbs trial after the initial appeal, and the appellate court remanded back. Right. So in that interim period of time between the election and the first trial, which took place very quickly, we had additional time to do what we would typically call discovery through public records requests.
Right. They didn't have an excuse to keep withholding records
Right.
at that point. You can only
Right.
withhold for so long
Right.
before you start getting sued.
Right.
Right.
And so they give up this data because I don't think they know what they've got.
They had no idea.
They had no idea. And so they give up this data, and then, we use it in Lake v. Hobbs too. And so, it becomes a huge issue, and that's why they get it to their friends in the media as quickly as possible so that they can, put out their, little gaslighting stories.
Propaganda.
Right, about what the data means and what it doesn't mean and how we're misinterpreting the data and blah, blah, blah. And so, you have these multiple changes in testimony and verbiage taking place that are really misleading for the court, because at one point they're saying, this guy was taken off the line, right? If he's doing what they're saying he's doing, he would be taken off the line, and you'll find that this guy was taken off the line. That's a very clear statement to
Yes,
make.
absolutely.
Right. And then you have Mr. Valenzuela saying, yes, he was basically taken off the line and transferred to another position. But one thing they could never come forward with, and never would have, because they knew that it would put them in a bad position, was his employee file and the fact that he was never removed from the line, which is very evident in the data. And so, when you have this type of wordsmithing, I guess, some would call it lying, some would call it wordsmithing, taking place, it becomes what's the truth? Where's the truth? Where does the truth lie? And that's why I would urge the Arizona legislature to modify Arizona election challenges such that it removes sort of the county and the elections department as parties to the process, and compels them then to produce documents and other requested evidence in a timely fashion, so that people challenging our very highly technical elections, have sufficient time within a 30-day time window that you have to analyze that data and make an effective election challenge and make your effective argument, right?
Absolutely. And, the other thing is there's so much more evidence that could have been presented if the format was different, right?
Yeah. Oh,
And
100%.
a minimal example of that, as Steve had pointed out, 134 was not the only user.
Yeah.
He was an easy user for us to highlight because of the position of the camera.
Right.
So it was real easy for us
Right.
to use him as the primary example.
Well,
but we found more users than not
just like
were speed
134.
flicking.
Right.
Just like 134.
And so the way it worked out is, you've got cameras positioned because Maricopa County is obligated by law to have, transparency in the elections, and they do so via the, camera, so the public
Right.
can watch what's taking place at the elections department. And so we were able to identify this as user 134 by correlating the data to what he was doing on the video. Right? You said before it was a very painstaking process that we went through to identify this individual, and they know we were right, which is why they made the statements they made during the trial.
It even went down to seconds of ticks, right. On the clicks in the data.
Right.
We could identify when somebody took a pee break.
Right.
I mean, when unfortunately, and I hate to beat up on 134, but he also had kind of a tendency to doze off or fall asleep.
Right.
And we could correlate the data with his nap time.
Right.
When he would doze off, there would be no disposition, and then all of a sudden
Right.
he'd wake up and then start clicking again.
Right.
So it was that precise, and they knew it, and
Right.
that's why they had to work the discredit.
Right. And so
I
that's-
even identified a couple places where he was basically asleep and still clicked a few times without even looking. Like his head wasn't even facing the
Right.
the screen. He's just kind of like clicking every once in a while, and then he wakes up and straightens himself up and goes back to work.
Yeah.
But it was very precise.
Right.
Steve, go ahead and finish off that video, and then we'll go through these last few things before we wrap up.
Other than signature verification.
So it's your testimony that while he was being supervised during the 2022 general election signature verification process, no supervisor found fault in what he was doing at level 1 signature verification.
From my information I gathered, none that they had recollection of that specifically, that it was just reassignment and into different tasks as needed.
So he was reassigned because he was needed elsewhere. And Your Honor, you're going to hear that individual was taken off the line.
To include the backwards review that is inferred he is performing, that he is being, I guess, apparently maligned to saying that is signature verification, when in fact it more than likely is just a second review.
All right. And so if we look at that there, what's taking place is he's now saying the very same issue we talked about before, right?
Right.
That he's going through and double checking his work.
Right. That's what we assume he must be doing, surely.
Right. And so, but it was Mr. Valenzuela himself that said that would not add clicks because he was not doing anything with respect to dispositions.
It wouldn't add anything to the data.
Right.
The secondary review does not create data points.
Right.
Correct.
Right. And so what time is it? It's getting to be about 9, right? And so we got to wrap up.
Yeah.
But one thing, again, I'm going to reiterate: conservative attorneys, right? We need you to be in the game. We need you to be on the ball, because these election challenges happen fast. They come at lightning speeds. And if you have never done a case of this complexity, this is the most complex election challenge I think I've ever seen.
It's baptism by fire.
Yeah.
Like I could not believe the process. It was just like a blur.
Yeah, you go into the war room, and aside from war room and court, I mean, that's essentially where you live.
Right.
As you sort through evidence, as you're drafting documents, as you're preparing to cross-examine, to direct examine witnesses, this process is very, very fast. and it requires, an army, and we didn't have an army to support us because they had been spending. We've talked about the 65 project. We've talked about the efforts to destroy the conservative bar throughout the United States and to intimidate conservative lawyers from bringing these very kinds of challenges.
They had
right?
like 12 attorneys
I
just
know.
in the courtroom,
Right.
not counting all of the attorneys that
Right.
they had working behind the scenes.
Oh, no doubt. Because
I mean, it was insane. And they like Perkins Coie, they called in all the big billion-dollar firms
right.
against you and Kurt Olson.
Yeah. Well, and we had
you
one
had
other attorney
support.
that was helping us
Yeah.
behind the scenes, but this was a huge war that is exceptionally important because elections have consequences, right? What about Arizona's budget? How about Katie Hobbs doing a good job there, right?
Oh, yeah.
She doesn't know what a budget is.
Right.
Look at the AG, political persecutions. Thank God, the courts are starting to shut some of these down. But yes, Steve.
I sped up the video. I skipped forward in case you guys want to show the chart of 134's.
You already had it up,
The
but
chart came up earlier.
Oh, did it come up
Yeah,
earlier?
we saw
Okay.
the chart earlier.
and
Yeah,
and so
perfect.
we can put the video on the website, and people can go there and view it.
Is it on YouTube, Steve?
Yeah.
Okay, so you can go to our YouTube, and then we can put it on the website to view that video because there's a lot of fact packed into it.
Yeah. And so, I mean, any last words?
No, I think it's important if you're in the legal profession, and I agree with Brian, we need you in this fight. We need you in the fight now, pre-election. We need you in the fight during the election. But if you're not, then we need your mouthpiece. We need this information spread far and wide. Educate yourself. Do not let them let us forget.
Right.
We have to keep reminding people what is going on in the elections because it doesn't matter cycle to cycle. We have not seen it fixed. And even if there are actions, like we saw Recorder Heap making some changes, and that's phenomenal, we are not going to get there overnight, and we're not going to get there without public oversight. So engage yourself, understand elections, ask questions, get involved, get engaged, and help recruit conservative attorneys into the fight.
Help with public records requests. I mean, they're making it impossible and insurmountably expensive to get records relating to our elections, right?
Yes.
It's a fight. We no, you can't have them, you can't have them, you can't have them. And we need your help in this. And if you can contribute financially to We the People USA Alliance, that would go a very long way as well to helping us stay in this battle and stay in this fight and continuing to wage litigation in order to get something that everyone should have access to. And those are records relating to how your government is conducting business. Right?
And it's not free.
No, not free.
Not free at all.
And it's fairly expensive. And
so we're not going to be here next Monday.
Okay.
I'm going to be out of town, and so we will catch you a week from next Monday, and hopefully we'll have some of the public records requests we submitted responded to by then, and we'll have an interesting show for you.
Yeah.
So,
and with that, peace.